Welcome to another deep dive. We're tackling Ruchir Sharma's The Rise and Fall of Nations.
Oh, a fascinating choice.
It is. This book is all about understanding what makes economies boom.
Or bust.
Right. And what I think is so cool is that it focuses on predictions for the next 5, 10 years. Stuff that could impact our lives.
Yeah. So much more practical than those vague, long-term forecasts.
Exactly. Sharma's not using some crystal ball. He's looking at real-world patterns to give us actionable insights. I love that.
It's about equipping us with the knowledge we can actually use.
Okay, so one of the most interesting ideas in the book is that economic success isn't this, steady climb to the top. It's more like a jungle out there.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right, nations rising and falling like lions and cheetahs battling it out. But then Sharma throws in this curveball about the swarm intelligence of wildebeest.
Okay, Vildes, now that's interesting. Where's he going with that?
I know. It's like, what do wildebeest have to do with economics?
Yeah.
But he's challenging our assumptions about these big economic powerhouses.
The ones we think are always at the top of the food chain.
Exactly, like the U.S. or China. We see them as these unstoppable forces.
But Sharma argues that even the things that make a nation successful can also cause its decline.
So even the mightiest lion can fall.
It can. Think about it. Even a lion can become vulnerable if it gets complacent or if it overextends itself.
So even the big guys aren't invincible.
Not at all. No one is immune to the forces that drive these cycles.
Got it. So what are some examples from the book that really show this?
Well, he talks about China a lot. Their growth has been incredible, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But a lot of it has been fueled by massive amounts of debt.
Oh.
And Sharma points out that this could actually backfire, lead to a slowdown in the coming years.
So too much debt, even for a powerhouse like China, can be a problem.
It can. And then there's the U.S., the shale oil boom. It's interesting. There are some parallels to the tech bubble. Yeah, you start to wonder if there's been too much investment in that sector. And, that could potentially set us up for a fall.
See, this is what I love about this book. It's full of surprises.
It keeps you on your toes.
And get this, Sharma lays out 10 specific rules to watch for when you're trying to understand where a country's economy is headed.
Okay, I'm intrigued. 10 rules.
10 rules. And some of them were pretty unexpected. Like, who knew the price of onions could be such a big deal?
Onion prices. Now, that's a curveball.
Right. And that appearing on the cover of Time magazine could be a bad omen for a country's economy. A bad omen.
Time magazine covers. Seriously.
I know, it sounds crazy. But Sharma actually makes a good case. These seemingly random things can tell you a lot. They're like powerful indicators of what's really going on underneath.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more about these onion prices.
So think about it. Onions. They're like a basic food in so many cuisines worldwide.
True, a staple ingredient.
So if their price goes up or down, it can reflect broader inflationary trends.
Particularly in those emerging economies.
Exactly. Where food costs are a huge part of people's budgets. Sharma gives the example of India.
Okay, India.
He says onion prices there have been a more accurate gauge of inflation.
More accurate than what?
Than complex government data. Can you believe that?
Wow, that's fascinating. It's like this simple everyday thing can give us a real glimpse into an economy's health.
And what about the Time magazine cover thing? What's that all about?
Well, Sharma noticed this pattern. Countries that end up on Time's cover, especially with really positive stories, well,
What happens?
often they'd experience a slowdown in the following years.
Oh, wow. Like what goes up must come down.
Kind of. Sharma actually mentions Japan in '92, France in 2006, even Germany in 2007.
All on the cover, all with glowing reviews.
And all of them saw their economies kind of falter afterwards.
So it's like those covers are capturing peak optimism.
When expectations have maybe gotten a little ahead of reality.
Okay, so note to self. If you see your country on the cover of Time magazine with a big thumbs up,
Proceed with caution.
maybe it's time to diversify that investment portfolio, right?
Haha, probably not a bad idea. But seriously, Sharma's point is that we need to be more careful about the information we consume.
Don't just believe the headlines.
Exactly. Dig a little deeper. Look for those counter signals.
The ones that might be hidden beneath the surface hype.
Exactly.
I'm starting to see how these rules can be so useful, like having a secret decoder ring for the global economy.
It's about seeing beyond the obvious.
One rule that really caught my eye was the idea that where a country's billionaires get their money, it matters. It's not just about being a billionaire, it's about how you got there.
That's right. It's not all the same.
So Sharma makes this distinction between good billionaires and bad billionaires.
Here.
Good billionaires are the innovators, the entrepreneurs, The ones who build things.
The ones who create wealth through, let's say, launching successful businesses or developing new technologies.
Like Elon Musk with electric cars, or someone creating a life-saving medical device.
Exactly. Those are good billionaires.
And what about bad billionaires?
Well, they're the ones who get rich through connections, special favors, or by exploiting loopholes.
They're not really creating wealth, they're more like extracting it.
That's a good way to put it, and often at the expense of others.
So how do these different types of billionaires affect a country's economy?
Well, Sharma says countries with a lot of good billionaires tend to be more dynamic.
More innovative.
Exactly. They attract investment, they create jobs, they drive progress.
So, like South Korea with Samsung, or even India, where we're seeing more billionaires coming from, like pharmaceuticals and consumer goods.
Perfect examples. Those are good billionaires making a real difference.
And what happens when a country has a lot of bad billionaires? What then?
That's where things can get tricky. Sharma uses Russia as an example. A lot of their wealth is tied up in oil and gas.
Ah, so tied to political connections, I bet.
Often, yes. And that kind of crony capitalism, it stifles competition, discourages real innovation.
So it's like one group is building the ship while the other's busy drilling holes in it.
That's a great analogy, and it highlights why it's so important to look beyond the surface, to ask questions like, where's the wealth coming from? Is it sustainable? Is it benefiting the whole economy?
So it's not just about how much wealth a country has, it's about the kind of wealth it is
Yeah.
and who's benefiting from it.
Precisely. And that brings us to another important point. Don't get too caught up in the hype. Those countries that are always in the news.
The ones that are always on our radar.
Exactly. Some of the best opportunities might be in those places everyone's overlooking.
Got it. So don't just follow the hype. Do your own research. Look for those hidden gems.
Exactly. The ones that are quietly building a solid foundation.
Any specific examples come to mind?
Absolutely. Take Vietnam. It's not a country that's always in the spotlight, but quietly,
Well,
they're becoming a manufacturing powerhouse. Seriously, smart policies, strategic location, they're attracting foreign investment, boosting their exports.
okay, Vietnam. You're officially on my watch list.
Good choice. Now, what about those countries that seem to get stuck in a rut? Economically speaking. The book talks about this middle income trap.
What is that exactly? Like they reach a certain income level and then hit a wall?
Yeah, the idea is that some countries struggle to transition from producing, say, basic goods to more complex, higher value
I
things.
think they get stuck in this economic purgatory.
Sort of, but Sharma challenges that idea a bit. He thinks those traps can happen at any income level, not just in the middle.
Really?
Yeah, he argues that it's not just about hitting a certain income, it's about avoiding pitfalls that can derail growth.
Okay, so give me an example. How does this play out in the real world?
Well, look at Brazil. They've reached middle income status, right?
They have.
But they still rely heavily on exporting raw materials like soybeans, iron ore.
Ah, so they're still dependent on commodities.
Yeah, and that's hindered their progress. They haven't really diversified their economy.
So they're kind of stuck.
In a way, yes. But on the other hand, you have Bangladesh, a low-income country.
Yeah.
But they're showing signs of actually breaking free from a poverty trap.
That's interesting. What are they doing differently?
Well, they're focusing on manufacturing, particularly textiles. That's helped boost their exports and create jobs.
And I've heard they have a young and growing workforce, right?
Exactly. So they've got this demographic advantage in the global market.
So it's like two very different stories. Brazil struggling, Bangladesh rising.
Yeah.
All because of different choices and different strategies.
Exactly. It highlights that a country's destiny isn't predetermined. It's about making smart choices.
And about creating the right conditions for sustainable growth.
Absolutely. Now, let's talk about something that might surprise you. Sharma argues that democracy actually leads to more stable growth over the long run.
Really, you'd think autocracies, where one person can just make decisions, would have the edge.
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Why does he say that?
Well, his point is that while autocracies can have those big booms in the short term,
Yeah.
they also tend to create bigger busts down the line.
Oh, so it's like higher highs but lower lows.
Exactly. And democracies, they have checks and balances.
Hmm.
That can help prevent those wild swings.
Makes sense. They're less prone to those sudden shifts that can really derail an economy.
Exactly. And that brings us back to Sharma's overall message. Sustainable growth requires balancing those economic and political forces.
Finding that sweet spot where you have both dynamism and stability.
Precisely. And that's a challenge that every country, every leader has to grapple with.
This is getting really interesting, but we've covered a lot of ground already. Should we take a break and come back for more?
Sounds good to me.
All right, listeners, stay tuned. We'll be back soon to continue our deep dive into the rise and fall of nations. Welcome back to our deep dive into the rise and fall of nations.
Ready for more?
I am. Let's jump into some more real-world examples.
All right, which one first?
Well, one that really fascinated me was Dubai.
Dubai. What about it?
It's like this futuristic oasis in the desert, always pushing the limits with those incredible skyscrapers and man-made islands.
It's a sight to behold.
It is, but what struck me was their economic resilience.
Resilience. In what way?
Well, think about it. They're surrounded by all this regional turmoil, but they seem to thrive.
You know, you're right. Look at the U.S. wars in Iraq, the Arab Spring, even 9/11. Dubai always seemed to weather those storms.
And bounce back stronger each time.
It's almost like they figured out how to turn chaos into opportunity.
So what's their secret?
Well, Sharma points to a few things. Their openness, for one. They've created this incredibly diverse environment, welcoming to people and businesses from all over the world.
So they're a magnet for global capital.
Exactly, even during times of uncertainty. And their strategic location is key, too.
Right. They sit at the crossroads of these major trade routes.
Connecting Asia, Europe, Africa, they've really leveraged that to become a hub for commerce and finance.
So they're not just open, they're strategically positioned within the global system.
Exactly. But even with all that, global economic shocks can still hurt.
True. Like the 2008 financial crisis, that must have been a blow.
It was, especially to their real estate sector. But you know what? They were able to adapt, recovered relatively quickly.
So they learn from their mistakes and adjust their strategies.
That's part of what makes them so resilient. And here's something interesting. Sharma thinks their proximity to Iran could be huge in the coming years.
Iran. That seems a bit risky, no?
It might seem that way. But Sharma argues that if sanctions on Iran are ever lifted, Dubai is perfectly positioned to become a major gateway for trade and investment.
Ah, so they're like the stepping stone into a massive emerging market.
Exactly. He even compares it to Hong Kong's role in the 80s when China was opening up.
Wow, that's a powerful parallel.
It is. Dubai could play that same connecting role for Iran, linking them to the global economy.
Dubai is definitely one to watch. But let's talk about a country that's been struggling, Russia.
What about Russia?
Well, their economy has been hurting ever since oil prices tanked, but Sharma points to deeper issues.
Okay, like what?
One big one is their failure to diversify. They've been riding the oil wave for too long.
Haven't invested enough in other sectors that could drive more sustainable growth.
Exactly. So now they're stuck in this boom and bust cycle, always at the mercy of global energy prices.
Ah, the resource curse.
And it's not just their economic structure. Their political system is a problem too.
Becoming more centralized.
Exactly. Dominated by a small group of elites.
Which brings us back to those bad billionaires.
It all connects, doesn't it?
It does. Sharma argues that a lot of Russia's billionaire wealth is in oil and gas, and,
tied to political connections.
often, yes, classic crony capitalism, which stifles innovation and shorts growth.
It's a reminder that economic prosperity needs more than just resources. You need a system that encourages competition, rewards innovation, and benefits everyone, not just a select few.
Absolutely, and that system needs to be fair and transparent. Now, for contrast, let's look at Bangladesh.
Bangladesh, what's happened there?
It's actually quite remarkable. It's not a country we typically think of as an economic success story, but Sharma highlights them as a potential model. They're showing real progress in breaking free from poverty.
Okay, color me intrigued. What are they doing right?
Well, for one thing, they're investing heavily in their manufacturing sector, but particularly textiles.
Textiles, that's interesting.
It is. And that's created a ton of jobs, fueled their export market. They've also got this young and growing workforce.
So they're benefiting from a demographic dividend.
Exactly. And they're doing all this within a democratic system.
So proof that it's possible to achieve economic progress while also respecting democratic values.
Precisely. Now, let's shift gears for a bit and talk about the U.S.
Okay, what does Sharma say about the U.S.?
Well, he acknowledges the strengths, of course, the entrepreneurial culture, the top-notch universities.
Those are definitely assets.
They are, but he also points out some worrying trends, especially when it comes to debt.
Right, the U.S. has a massive debt overhang. That's been a concern for years.
And Sharma worries that too much money is flowing into speculative assets, like real estate or the stock market.
Instead of going into productive investments.
Things like infrastructure, research and development, education, those things that drive long-term growth.
So it's like we're focused on short-term gains instead of building a solid foundation for the future.
And that kind of imbalance can lead to bubbles, to busts, to instability.
It's a reminder that no economy, no matter how powerful, is immune to those forces.
Exactly. Now, for a different perspective, let's look at Germany.
Germany.
Yeah.
What makes them interesting in this context?
Well, they've managed to maintain a strong manufacturing base, even as other developed countries have seen theirs decline.
They're known for their precision engineering, their high-quality products.
Exactly, and they've been incredibly disciplined with their fiscal policy, kept their debt under control.
Sounds like they're doing a lot of things right.
They are, and here's something unique. Their political system gives a lot of power to local regions.
Ah, so it's a more decentralized approach.
And it seems to have fostered innovation and competition with different regions specializing in different industries.
Interesting contrast to those more centralized systems we see in Russia or China. So empowering local communities can actually be a strength.
It seems so. Another interesting point, their approach to immigration, especially in light of the recent refugee crisis.
Right, they've been much more welcoming than many other European countries.
And Sharma sees that as an economic opportunity.
Really?
Yeah, Germany has an aging population like many developed nations.
Right, and they need immigrants to fill that gap in the workforce.
Precisely. He believes those refugees, many of whom are skilled and motivated, could actually be a boon to the German economy.
Turning a humanitarian crisis into a potential economic win. It's a fascinating angle.
It is. Sometimes the best solutions are the ones that aren't immediately obvious. But speaking of countries facing challenges, let's talk about Brazil.
Brazil, what's going on there?
Well, they've got all the ingredients for success,
A huge population, tons of natural resources.
a vibrant culture.
But they just haven't been able to translate that potential into sustained prosperity.
And Sharma points out that they've made some critical mistakes along the way.
Like what?
One big one is over-reliance on exporting raw materials.
The old don't put all your eggs in one basket problem.
Exactly. They haven't invested enough in diversifying their economy.
And I imagine corruption and political instability haven't helped either.
You're absolutely right. Those factors have scared off investors, undermined growth. Sharma argues that Brazil is a prime example of a country stuck in that middle-income trap.
They reached a certain level of development, but can't seem to break through to the next stage.
That's the trap. But let's shift our focus to Asia, where things are looking a bit different.
Okay, what's happening in Asia?
Well, we've already talked about Vietnam's rise as a manufacturing hub. But another interesting case is Indonesia.
Indonesia. They've always felt like a sleeping giant to me. Huge population, strategic location, tons of natural resources.
You're right, all the ingredients are there.
But they've struggled to unlock their potential.
It's true, but it seems like things might be changing.
Oh, what's different now?
Well, they're working on opening up their economy. More trade, more investment.
Good signs.
They're also investing in infrastructure, which is crucial for connecting their islands and supporting growth.
Makes sense.
And their current president, Joko Widodo, is seen as a reformer, committed to tackling corruption, improving governance.
Those are the kind of leaders that can make a real difference.
If you can keep that momentum going, Indonesia could be on the cusp of a major economic boom.
Okay, Indonesia. Added to my watch list. But let's talk about a broader trend that's affecting everyone. Deglobalization.
Deglobalization. What do you mean by that?
Well, Sharma argues that we're moving away from that hyper-connected world we saw in the 90s and early 2000s.
Interesting. What's driving that shift?
Well, the 2008 financial crisis definitely played a role. It exposed the vulnerabilities of this interconnected system, where a crisis in one country could trigger a domino effect globally.
So it made people question the benefits of globalization.
Exactly. Especially if it means their jobs are being outsourced, their wages are
It
stagnating.
makes sense. And then you have the rise of populism, nationalism, fueled by concerns about job losses, immigration, loss of sovereignty.
Those are powerful forces.
They are, and they're putting pressure on governments to pull back from globalization, to prioritize their own national interests.
So, is globalization dead? Are we headed back to a world of closed borders?
Sharma doesn't think it's that black and white. He thinks we're entering a new era. More regionalism, a greater emphasis on national interests.
So not a borderless world, but a multipolar world, where different regions, different countries are jockeying for position.
Precisely. And this shift is going to have a huge impact on everyone. Businesses, investors, policymakers.
Navigating this new landscape is going to require a whole new set of skills.
It will. We need to be adaptable, informed, and strategic. more than ever before.
Yeah, this conversation has been incredibly enlightening. I feel like we've traveled the world exploring these different economic landscapes.
It's been a journey, and we've only scratched the surface.
I know. And speaking of exploration, I want to circle back to this idea of forgotten countries.
The ones that are often overlooked.
Sharma argues that the real opportunities might be in those places, the ones the media and the markets are ignoring.
It's about looking beyond the obvious.
And that's where things get really interesting. Because how do we even identify these hidden gems? What are the signs that a forgotten country might be worth a closer look?
Okay, so let's play detective for a moment. What should we be looking for?
Well, I'd say the first thing is look for countries that are really trying to diversify their economies.
Diversify, you mean moving beyond just exporting raw materials?
Exactly. Developing more sophisticated industries, investing in education and technology to build that skilled workforce, those are good signs.
So it's about looking past those flashy headlines and really digging into their long-term strategies.
Absolutely. Another big one is, are they focused on good governance and political stability?
So tackling corruption, creating a stable business environment. Exactly. Look for things like, are they investing in infrastructure, making it easy to do business? Those things matter.
It sounds like it takes a bit of research, but the payoff could be huge.
That's the exciting part. It's like being an economic explorer.
Uncovering hidden gems before the rest of the world catches on.
Precisely. Sharma wants us to be more than just passive observers.
He wants us to actively engage with the global economy.
To think critically, to challenge assumptions, and to maybe even find those opportunities that others are missing.
This whole conversation has been eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new framework for understanding how the world works.
I'm glad to hear that. It's been a great discussion.
But remember, folks, this is just the beginning. Sharma's book gives us the tools, but it's up to each of us to use them.
To do our own research, to draw our own conclusions.
And maybe even discover the next big economic success story before anyone else.
Now, wouldn't that be something?
So, to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep learning. The world is full of possibilities. And with a little insight, a little curiosity, who knows what you might find? For more such content, go to our channel, Pages and Perspectives. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and press the bell icon to get the latest updates. Thank you for joining us.